Welcome to That's Pretty Neat with Rodger and Stefan, where we discuss neat, holistic, regenerative agriculture. Okay, how about overrest? What's that?
So I think overrest is the one thing we should be categorically teaching children in school, in America, in Africa, in South America, in Australia. Because most of the countries and the continents that I've just mentioned had immigrants who immigrated from England. Now, my name for England is Mud Island, for the simple reason it is always raining there.
Yeah.
So it's a non-brittle environment. It's wet all the time. So the ancestral knowledge that came from England to the Americas, to the Australias, to Africa, probably even to India, was ancestral knowledge based on atmospheric moisture year-round. However, in these places, we have a wet season and a dry season. And what we find is that in the brittle environments of the world, which is the places where we have the wet and the dry season, we always find that the grasslands are dying from what we call overrest. Now, what that is the grasses evolved with grazing animals on the prairies, on the steppes, on the savannas. What's the Australian word? In the outback. So the grasses evolved to have a grazing animal. And there's not a grass in the world that can drop its leaves at the end of the year. So a grass plant grows up, it's nice and green, and let's say it's a 3-month or a 6-week or a 4-month wet season, it doesn't matter, it grows and it stays nice and green. And then the rain stops, and then the plant dries up. Well, at first it goes a lovely golden color, and it sits there, and then a year later it started to get carbon oxide and it started to go gray. Well, then the rain comes again. Now, if you didn't have a grazing animal to graze it off when it was nice and golden, when the rain comes again, the growth points are normally down at the bottom within a millimeter of the soil surface. So now you've got 4, 6, 8, 12 inches of grass above, basically being shade and preventing sunlight getting to the growth points at the base of the grass plant. So when the grass sends its spring shoot up, it comes up as a white or a yellow shoot. There's no chlorophyll in it because it's waiting to get sunlight. But if it sends that shoot up and it can't find sunlight, it starts to die. And gradually over the years, as more and more carbon builds up and it becomes a darker mat, and by the way, after the first year, once it's gone gray, it's inedible. Nothing can eat it.
Yeah.
So now it gets more and more shady. More and more of the plant dies. It'll try and stay alive around the outside edge, but we always find that the centers are dead, absolutely dead. Well, now that plant is dying from overrest because it actually had to have a grazing animal in its life cycle, either to trample it with herd effect or to graze the leaves off so that when the rains came, the sunlight could penetrate, get to those growth points, and it could start growing. Now, the thing is, with overrest, when you shoot millions of bison and sell their tongues and hides to Europe and you remove all the bison, well, now all those living carbon cycling vats, the stomachs of the bison, are gone. So now what happens is now the grassland starts to die and the prairies start to die. So what we had in America was we killed the carbon cycling machines because we came from Mud Island. We didn't know how vital they were for the ecosystem. So we were making a very narrow-minded decision, let's kill the food source of the Indians. So we killed the food source of the Indians. We created a desert because now the grassland died from overrest. We imported a few cattle from Europe, but those numbers had to very slowly breed up because the cattle herd only doubles in size every 6 years. Meanwhile, you've got millions of acres dying from overrest in that same 6-year period. And so, because all the plants didn't have a grazing animal to keep them alive. So Nevada, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, all those more brittle environment states turned to desert. And it was done because of overrest. And the overrest started with us killing the bison. Well, then in the 1930s, we did some science in America where we rested pieces of land around America for 3 years. And we found that when we rested it from grazing, generally Navajo sheep grazing, but when we rested the land from grazing, it responded and it did really well for 3 years. But then we wrote policy and we said, destock. We've got too many animals.
Oh, no.
Because we didn't understand that it wasn't too many animals. They were on the land for too long. You see, the bison used to migrate with their elk and pronghorn following them. But we put up barbed wire fences and someone bought a property. So now they had a few sheep or a few goats or one cow on their little farms for too long. We didn't understand the connection to time, to animal density, to herd effect. So we overrested millions of acres of land, and our government policies today exacerbate the problem.
Oh, no.
So we really need for our children to understand just how damaging overrest is. And if there's one thing we could ask the population of America, the millenniums to do, it's demand of our government that they solve the problem of overrest and make any grazing management leases or policies on BLM land or forestry land time related, not animal number related, and density related, because we need to be managing for time and density to prevent overrest.
You can follow Rodger at d2gftf.com and also on his socials at Rodger Savory Holistic Management on YouTube and Facebook. We are Las Cumbres Ranch. You can follow us on social media at Las Cumbres Ranch over all platforms. And thanks for tuning in. It's been real neat.